11 negative things that happen when you talk too much. The power of keeping silent. Stoicism. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak. Epictetus. Have you ever found yourself regretting the words you've said, wishing you had stayed silent instead? That sinking feeling when you realize that speaking too much can lead to misunderstandings and even damage relationships. In today's video, we dive deep into Stoic philosophy to explore the hidden power of silence and why mastering the art of restraint can transform your life. In a world where everyone is constantly vying for attention, being the one who knows when to hold back can set you apart as truly wise. It's not just about avoiding idle gossip or unnecessary conflict. Every word you speak has weight, and knowing when to stay silent could earn you more respect and admiration than you ever imagined. Intrigued? Stick around as we reveal the 11 negative consequences of talking too much and how embracing silence can become your greatest strength. Before we dive in, if you find value in the lessons we share here on Stoic in Your Life, please hit the subscribe button and tap the bell to stay updated on all our new content. You won't want to miss any of these lessons. One of them could be the key to unlocking the change you've been seeking. Let's get started. 1. You will awaken fear in others. Silence is a lesson learned through life's many struggles. Seneca. Have you ever noticed that when you speak too much about others, it doesn't build camaraderie? It breeds fear. You may think you're sharing harmless insights or even contributing to a lighthearted conversation, but the reality is much darker. When you frequently criticize others, gossip, or give unsolicited opinions, you're planting seeds of discomfort in those around you. People begin to wonder, if you talk about others like this, what will you say about me? This subtle fear makes others wary, cautious, and even defensive around you, damaging the trust that is essential for strong relationships. In a world where words have the power to connect or divide, knowing when to speak and when to stay silent is a form of mastery. Stoicism teaches us that we should focus on what is within our control. Our words are one of the few things we can fully command. Epictetus once said, "We have control over our actions, not their outcomes." This applies perfectly to how we interact with others. While you may not control how people perceive you, you do control the impact of your words. Speaking too much, especially about others, can shift the balance of power in your relationships. People may start avoiding conversations with you, fearing that anything they say or do could become fodder for your next story. And here's the truth. Every time you indulge in excessive talk, especially about the personal affairs of others, you are building invisible walls between yourself and the people in your life. So how does this apply to modern life? Today, people are more connected than ever through social media, instant messaging, and other forms of communication. Yet with all this connectivity, trust can still be fragile. You may feel compelled to speak up in group settings or online to share your opinions, perhaps thinking that your voice needs to be heard. But remember, the more you talk about others, the more you erode the foundations of trust. Not only with those you're discussing, but with everyone listening. Your audience is not just those who are present, but those who will come to know of your words through others. And once you gain a reputation for being someone who talks too much, particularly about others, it's hard to shake that label. Your friends, colleagues, and even family may begin to view you as a source of stress rather than someone they can rely on for support. This is why Stoic wisdom encourages us to adopt the habit of silence, both as a protective mechanism and as a way to deepen our understanding of ourselves and others. As Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Silence allows us to regain control over our thoughts, making room for reflection before we speak. When you learn to speak less and listen more, you'll notice that people feel safer around you, willing to share more without fear of judgment or gossip. By mastering the art of silence, you can also become a person who is valued for their insights, Think about it. When you speak sparingly, your words carry more weight. People will seek out your thoughts and opinions because they know that when you do speak, it's meaningful. In today's fast-paced world, this trait is a rarity. Many people are so eager to voice their thoughts that they don't realize how much more powerful silence can be. Your silence can act as a beacon of calm in a storm of noise. And that, my friends, is where real power lies. To shift the focus to your own personal growth, start by monitoring your conversations. Do you find yourself filling the air with unnecessary talk just to avoid silence? If so, take a step back and reflect on whether those words were truly necessary. As you practice this more often, you'll notice how silence can help you steer clear of the negative consequences of excessive talk, like creating discomfort, stirring gossip, or generating fear in others. The less you say, the more valuable your words become. And if you're concerned that silence will make you appear indifferent or disengaged, remember that true engagement often comes from active listening. Instead of contributing to every conversation, take the time to truly absorb what others are saying. This creates an environment of trust where people feel heard rather than judged. In fact, in a world where everyone seems to be fighting for the last word, the person who listens intently stands out as someone who is both wise and approachable. Finally, remember that silence is not the absence of communication. It's a different, deeper form of it. When you choose to stay silent in situations where speaking out of turn could cause harm, you demonstrate respect not only for others but also for yourself. You show that you have the discipline to hold back when necessary, and that your thoughts are not dictated by impulse, but by consideration. This is one of the core teachings of Stoicism. Self-control leads to wisdom, and wisdom leads to respect. So, as you navigate your conversations, whether in personal or professional life, always ask yourself, is what I'm about to say necessary? If it's not, it's often better to embrace the power of silence. You'll be surprised at how much strength you can find in choosing not to speak. And in doing so, you'll avoid awakening fear and distrust in others. As the Stoics have taught us, silence is a source of great strength. Practice it, live by it, and you will become not only a better communicator but a more trusted and respected individual in the eyes of others. 2. You become a know-it-all. Have you ever found yourself in a conversation where you're eager to share everything you know? Maybe the topic is something you're passionate about, or perhaps it's just a chance to display your vast knowledge. However, as you dive deeper into the conversation, you might notice the people around you aren't as engaged as you'd hoped. Instead of admiration, you're met with disinterest, or worse, subtle discomfort. This is what happens when you fall into the trap of being a know-it-all. Talking too much, especially about things you know well, can have a negative effect. It turns people off. There's a fine line between sharing helpful information and overwhelming others with unsolicited advice or trivia. When you speak too much, it can come across as boastful or even condescending, even if that's not your intent. Over time, this habit can damage your relationships, whether it's with friends, family, or coworkers. Consider this. We live in an age of information. We have access to endless knowledge at our fingertips, and because of that, we sometimes feel the need to prove we know just as much as the next person. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that if we don't share every piece of knowledge we have, we're somehow losing out. But is that really the case? Let's take a moment to reflect on modern life. Think of a time you were in a conversation where someone else kept talking, sharing fact after fact, perhaps about a topic you weren't even that interested in. Maybe you felt drained or mentally checked out because it wasn't a dialogue anymore. It had turned into a lecture. Now ask yourself, have you ever been on the other side of that? Have you ever been the one doing all the talking, only to realize that the others stopped engaging a while ago? It's easy to think that being well-versed in many subjects is always a positive, but sometimes the way we present our knowledge can have the opposite effect. There's a story that fits well with this idea. In today's workplace, many people take pride in knowing every detail about their job. Take, for example, a professional who spent years mastering their craft. This person takes every opportunity to share what they've learned with their colleagues. At first, the team listens attentively, eager to learn from someone so experienced. But over time, the team starts to feel overwhelmed. Instead of conversations, every meeting becomes a monologue, with this person dominating the discussion. Soon, people begin to tune out, avoid asking for advice, and worst of all, they stop collaborating openly. Why? Because the know-it-all approach made the environment less welcoming. The lesson here is clear. Sometimes, less is more. The more you try to impress others with your knowledge, the more you risk pushing them away. As Epictetus once said, it is impossible to begin to learn that which one thinks one already knows. In essence, when we act as if we know everything, we shut ourselves off from the opportunity to learn, grow, and connect with others. This can be particularly damaging in relationships, where mutual respect and shared wisdom should be the foundation. When you always have an answer, always have the last word, or consistently dominate conversations, it's as if you're closing the door on someone else's voice. It may seem like you're contributing, but in reality, you're creating a one-way street of communication. And if there's one thing we know, it's that people want to feel heard, not lectured. So how do you avoid becoming the know-it-all in your group? It starts with active listening. Instead of waiting for your turn to speak, focus entirely on what the other person is saying. Ask yourself, what can I learn from them? Is there an opportunity to deepen this conversation through thoughtful questions rather than showcasing what I already know? Being curious about others not only makes you more approachable, but it also allows for more meaningful exchanges. The key is to balance sharing what you know with learning from those around you. Let's go a step further. Picture a time when someone gave you advice, but instead of feeling grateful, you felt patronized. This happens more often than you might think. The way we deliver knowledge is just as important as the knowledge itself. People are more likely to appreciate your input if it's given with humility, not superiority. Think about this next time you're tempted to share all the facts you know on a particular subject. Instead of unloading everything, choose your words carefully. Offer insight in a way that encourages a two-way conversation, where the other person feels like a valued participant, not just an audience. Now consider this. How would it feel if you were known not for how much you speak, but for how well you listen? There's great wisdom in knowing when to hold back. When you speak less, the words you do share carry more weight. People will come to value your opinion more because they know that when you speak, it's thoughtful and deliberate. In contrast, when you talk all the time, people might start tuning you out, not because what you're saying isn't valuable, but because they feel overwhelmed. This is one of the great lessons Stoicism teaches us. Control of speech is a sign of wisdom, and choosing when to speak is just as important as choosing what to say. A common mistake many of us make is thinking that silence equates to disengagement or lack of intelligence. But in reality, silence is often a sign of respect, patience, and thoughtfulness. When you allow others to speak and give them space to share their thoughts, you create an environment of trust and collaboration. This is especially important in leadership roles. Great leaders know when to speak and, more importantly, when to listen. It's through listening that they gain insight, foster respect, and build stronger teams. The same principle applies to friendships, marriages, and any relationship you care about nurturing. Remember that being knowledgeable is valuable, but sharing that knowledge wisely is even more important. It's not about how much you know, but how you use what you know to benefit others. People remember how you made them feel in a conversation, not just the words you said. By focusing on listening more and speaking less, you'll build deeper, more trusting relationships. You'll be the person others seek out, not because you talk the most, but because you listen the best. As Socrates said, the only true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing. Keep that in mind next time you're in a conversation. Ask yourself if your words are serving the moment, or if silence might serve it better. In the end, silence often holds the most profound wisdom. 3. You do nothing. Have you ever found yourself endlessly talking about your goals, the changes you want to make, or the plans you're excited about, only to realize that you've done nothing to actually move forward? This is a trap many of us fall into, talking about our intentions so much that it feels like we're already taking action when in fact, we're standing still. The more you talk about your plans without acting on them, the more you deceive yourself into believing that you're progressing. This is what happens when we confuse words with action. It's a common psychological pitfall. When you share your goals or ideas with others, you experience a small burst of satisfaction, as though you've already accomplished something. But here's the truth. Nothing has been done yet. You've merely spoken about what you hope to achieve, and talking about it too much can actually reduce your motivation to follow through. It's like talking about going to the gym but never putting on your sneakers and stepping out the door. It might feel good to imagine yourself working out, but you're not getting any healthier just by talking about it. As the Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. Notice the emphasis on doing, not just saying. Talking too much about your intentions gives you the illusion of progress when in reality, your feet are still planted firmly in the same spot. The more you discuss your plans without acting, the more you create a pattern of inaction. It's like convincing yourself you're climbing a mountain when you haven't even taken the first step. So why do we fall into this pattern of talking without acting? Often it's because talking about our goals gives us a sense of validation. We enjoy the recognition and encouragement we get when we share our big plans with others. But what happens when the conversation is over and the real work begins? That's where the hard part comes in. You see, action is difficult. It requires commitment, focus, and sometimes even discomfort. It's easy to say you'll start that new business, learn a new language, or finally get in shape. But taking the first steps toward those goals is where most people falter. Talking is easy. Doing is hard. It's in the doing where growth, achievement, and change happen. Here's a modern example. Think of New Year's resolutions. Every year, millions of people talk about the changes they're going to make. They tell their friends, their families, and sometimes even post about it on social media. But by the time February rolls around, many of these resolutions are forgotten. Why? Because talking about goals doesn't create lasting habits. The initial excitement fades and the hard work of turning words into action is left undone. Have you ever caught yourself doing this? Have you made grand plans, only to find yourself months down the road, still talking about the same thing without having made any real progress? As Marcus Aurelius, one of the great Stoic philosophers, once said, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." This statement beautifully captures the essence of what it means to shift from words to action. If we spend all our time talking about what we want to achieve or who we want to become, we miss out on the opportunity to actually do the work. Success is not built on conversation. It's built on effort, persistence, and action. Ask yourself, how often do you find yourself discussing your goals without taking meaningful steps toward them? When was the last time you talked about doing something significant and then followed through immediately? If the gap between your words and your actions is growing, then it's time to close that gap. How? Start by acting small. Instead of telling everyone about the big plans you have, take one small step in the direction of those plans, without announcing it. Whether it's signing up for a course, making the first call to start a business, or spending just 10 minutes exercising, the key is to do something that moves you forward. The Stoics believed in focusing on what you can control. You can't control the future, but you can control the effort you put in today. And that's where real progress happens. Well begun is half done. As Aristotle famously said, the sooner you stop talking about what you want to do and start doing it, the sooner you'll see results. But let's be clear. Action isn't glamorous all the time. Sometimes it's tedious and difficult. But if you keep waiting for the perfect time, the perfect conditions, or the perfect opportunity, you may find yourself stuck in a cycle of endless talk without ever moving forward. And here's a powerful thought for you. How different would your life be if you spent as much time doing as you do talking? If every conversation about your goals was instead turned into productive action, imagine how much further you'd be in a few months or even a year. While others are talking about their dreams, you could be quietly working toward yours. While others are stuck in the comfort of conversation, you could be taking meaningful steps toward growth and change. And that's what the power of silence is all about. It's not just about holding your tongue in conversations. It's about channeling your energy into what truly matters, your actions. So the next time you find yourself in a conversation where you're tempted to share your latest goal or big idea, pause and ask yourself, have I taken any steps to make this real? If the answer is no, maybe it's time to act before you talk. Instead of sharing your plan, why not wait until you've already made progress? You'll find that the satisfaction of quietly achieving your goals far outweighs the temporary pleasure of talking about them. Plus, when you share what you've accomplished rather than what you intend to do, you inspire others to follow through on their own plans too. Your actions speak louder than words ever could. While it may feel satisfying to talk about your goals, remember that talking alone won't get you anywhere. Action is what separates those who dream from those who achieve. The Stoics remind us that we should act in the present and focus on what we can control, because in the end, that's all that truly matters. Stop talking, start doing, and watch as your life begins to change. As the old saying goes, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Take that step today and let your actions do the talking. 4. You lose respect for others. Better to remain silent and be thought a fool than to speak and to remove all doubt. This well-known saying echoes the wisdom of the Stoics. It's easy to get carried away in conversations, sharing your thoughts and opinions freely. But when talking too much becomes a habit, you risk something more significant than simply being misunderstood. You risk losing respect for others. Have you ever caught yourself interrupting someone mid-sentence, eager to add your opinion or make a point? In those moments, whether you realize it or not, you're signaling to the other person that their words, their thoughts, and even their perspective are less important than yours. This is one of the unfortunate effects of speaking too much. You unknowingly begin to diminish the value of others' contributions, and over time, you lose respect for their voice. When you dominate a conversation, you're not just filling the space with your words, you're subtly shifting the dynamic. The more you speak, the less you listen, and when you stop listening, you stop valuing what others have to say. This is where things start to unravel. As the Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." The wisdom here is simple but profound. Listening is more powerful than talking. It's through listening that we truly learn about others, understand their perspective, and form deeper connections. But when we talk too much, we lose out on that opportunity, and with it, the respect we have for others begins to fade. Think about your relationships, whether at work, at home, or with friends. How often have you noticed someone in your circle who tends to dominate conversations? Over time, you might find yourself pulling away from that person, feeling as though they don't truly value your input. Now consider if you've ever been that person, the one who always has something to say. If you are constantly talking and sharing your thoughts, you might not even realize how much you're shutting others down, making them feel invisible in the conversation. Respect in any relationship is built on mutual understanding and a balance of give and take. When you take up all the space with your words, there's no room left for others to contribute, and their respect for you may start to diminish as well. Marcus Aurelius. The Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher often reflected on the importance of humility in both thought and action. He said, "If someone is able to show me that what I think or do is not right, I will happily change, for I seek the truth, which never harmed anyone. The harm is to persist in one's own self-deception and ignorance." This quote reminds us that no one has all the answers, and believing that your perspective is the only one worth sharing is a form of self-deception. True wisdom comes from recognizing that others have valuable insights too, and that we grow not by talking endlessly, but by listening and learning from those around us. In today's world, it's easy to see how this issue of talking too much plays out. Social media platforms have given everyone a megaphone to share their opinions, thoughts, and ideas. The problem is, many people are more focused on broadcasting their views than engaging in meaningful dialogue. This constant noise has led to a culture where listening has become a lost art. People rush to share their latest opinions without taking the time to consider what others might be offering. In this fast-paced, talk-heavy environment, respect for differing viewpoints is eroding. We're seeing it in online debates, in political conversations, and even in everyday interactions. The more we talk, the less we truly hear, and when that happens, we lose the ability to respect what others bring to the table. Now, let's apply this to your own life. Have you noticed that in certain conversations, you're more eager to speak than to listen? Maybe it's at work when a colleague is offering their idea, but you're already thinking of a counterpoint before they've even finished their sentence. Or perhaps it's during a family gathering, where you find yourself steering the conversation toward topics you're more comfortable with, rather than letting others express themselves. When you do this, even if it's unintentional, you're sending a message that your voice matters more. But here's the hard truth. When you stop respecting what others have to say, you stop respecting them as individuals. Respect is something that must be nurtured through active listening, thoughtful consideration, and genuine curiosity about others' viewpoints. It's about giving space to others to speak and truly hearing them out, even if you don't agree with their perspective. As Seneca wisely said, "Most powerful is he who has himself in his own power." This is the essence of Stoicism, having control over your impulses, including the impulse to dominate conversations. It's about showing restraint, allowing others to contribute, and valuing their input as much as your own. One of the best ways to cultivate respect for others in conversation is to practice intentional silence. The next time you're in a discussion, focus on listening more than speaking. Let others finish their thoughts before jumping in with yours. Ask open-ended questions that show genuine interest in what they're saying. This small shift in behavior can make a huge difference. Not only will you gain a deeper understanding of the people around you, but they will also feel valued and respected, which strengthens your relationships and builds mutual trust. Have you ever left a conversation feeling like you were truly heard and respected? How did that make you feel? Now, imagine being the person who gives that same gift to others. By choosing to listen more and speak less, you're not only showing respect, but also demonstrating emotional intelligence. People will naturally gravitate towards you, appreciating the space you create for them to express themselves. And when they feel respected, they're more likely to respect you in return. Talking too much isn't just about filling the air with your voice. It's about losing touch with the people around you. When you dominate conversations, you lose respect for others, and they, in turn, may lose respect for you. The Stoic practice of silence and thoughtful speech is the antidote to this. It teaches us that restraint is a form of strength, and that wisdom comes not from speaking more, but from listening better. As you move forward, challenge yourself to talk less and listen more. Your relationships will thrive, and the respect you have for others, and they for you, will only grow. As the Stoics remind us, sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. If you've made it this far, you're truly embracing the wisdom of silence. Drop a comment saying, "I choose silence," to show you're committed to mastering the power of listening. Stick around. The journey to personal growth is just beginning. 5. You reveal information that should stay hidden. Have you ever been in a conversation where, without even realizing it, you end up revealing something you later regret? It's that moment when the words slip out, and you wish you could pull them back in. We've all been there, but the truth is, revealing information that should stay hidden can have serious consequences, not just for you, but for others as well. It might seem harmless at first. Maybe you're just trying to keep the conversation going, or perhaps you want to share an interesting story. But when you divulge confidential information, especially things that were entrusted to you in confidence, it can break trust, hurt relationships, and even harm your reputation. As Seneca wisely said, speech is the mirror of the mind. When we speak without thinking, we reveal not just secrets, but also our lack of self-control and respect for boundaries. Let's think about how this plays out in today's world, where information is shared more quickly and widely than ever. You might be chatting with friends or colleagues, and before you know it, you've shared a detail about someone's personal life that wasn't meant to be public. In our age of social media, this can be even more dangerous. A casual comment in a group chat or an offhand remark at a party can easily spread like wildfire, leading to misunderstandings, embarrassment, or even damaging someone's career. You see, when you share what should remain private, you're not just revealing information, you're exposing someone's vulnerabilities. As Epictetus said, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak. This quote reminds us of the power of restraint, not just in what we choose to say, but also in what we choose not to reveal. Consider this. Have you ever shared something about a friend that you later realized wasn't yours to tell? Maybe it was a personal struggle they confided in you, a detail about their family, or a mistake they made that wasn't for public consumption. How did that feel afterward? More importantly, how did it affect your relationship with that person? When we talk too much, especially about things that should stay hidden, we chip away at the trust people place in us. Trust, once broken, is hard to rebuild. And when people stop trusting you, they stop sharing their lives with you, leaving you on the outside of meaningful conversations and relationships. The result is not just a damaged friendship, but also a reputation that others may begin to question. Let's bring this idea into modern life. Think of workplace environments where confidentiality is crucial. You might hear some inside information, maybe about a new project, a client, or a colleague's upcoming promotion, and you're tempted to share it with someone else. It might feel like no big deal at the time, but once that information spreads, it can cause real damage. Maybe the project gets delayed, or worse, the person who trusted you with that information now views you as unreliable. The workplace is built on respect and professionalism, and when you reveal things that should stay hidden, you risk not only your credibility, but your future opportunities. Even in personal relationships, the same rule applies. When you share too much, you risk pushing people away because they no longer feel safe opening up to you. As Marcus Aurelius said, the things you think about determine the quality of your mind. If your mind is preoccupied with gossip or unnecessary revelations, it reflects poorly on your character. Now let's shift the focus to why we feel the need to reveal things in the first place. Often it's because we want to seem important or in the know. We want to be the one who has the latest scoop, the person others look to for information. But what if I told you that the real power lies in silence? When you learn to hold back, to keep things private when they should be, you actually gain more respect from those around you. People trust you more, knowing that their secrets are safe with you, and that kind of trust is far more valuable than any momentary satisfaction you get from sharing a juicy piece of information. So how can we stop ourselves from revealing too much? It starts with awareness. The next time you're in a conversation and feel the urge to share something personal or confidential, pause and ask yourself, is this my information to share? If the answer is no, keep it to yourself. Practice restraint, and remind yourself that true wisdom often comes from what we don't say. Silence is a sign of maturity, and knowing when to keep quiet can strengthen your relationships and enhance your reputation as someone who can be trusted. 6. You become the family traitor. Picture yourself in a family conversation where you unintentionally reveal something that was meant to stay hidden. You share a personal detail, a family secret, or maybe a sensitive topic thinking it's no big deal at the time. But as the words leave your mouth, you notice the shift in the room, the sudden silence, the awkward glances, or worse, the anger on someone's face. It's at that moment you realize you've crossed a line, and now you're labeled as the person who can't keep family matters private. You become, in essence, the family traitor. In Stoicism, there's a deep respect for silence and self-restraint. And when you lose control of your words, it can not only damage your reputation, but also harm the trust that others place in you. As Seneca once said, speech is the mirror of the mind. Your words reflect who you are and how much respect you have for the people closest to you. When you talk too much, especially about sensitive issues within your family, you betray the bonds of trust that are supposed to hold those relationships together. Let's think about why this happens. Sometimes, we're so eager to be part of the conversation or share something that we don't stop to think about the impact of what we're saying. Maybe it's an innocent slip-up, or maybe we think we're helping by offering information that wasn't meant to be shared. Either way, the result is the same: damage to relationships that might take years to repair. Have you ever noticed that the more you talk, the more likely you are to reveal things that should stay private? When you over-communicate, especially in family settings, you start crossing boundaries that should be respected, whether it's something as small as a private joke or as serious as a deeply personal issue. Revealing too much can create lasting divisions among family members. Now, let's relate this to a common scenario in modern life. Think about holiday gatherings or family reunions. You're sitting at the table, and the conversation takes a turn towards someone who isn't there. Maybe it's an aunt or a cousin who's going through a tough time, and before you know it, you've shared something that confided in you. The family listens, but the fallout comes later. That person eventually finds out, and now they feel betrayed, not only by the one who shared the information, but by the entire family for allowing it to happen. These situations are more common than we think, and they can fracture relationships in ways we don't immediately see. As Epictetus wisely stated, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak. This quote reminds us of the importance of listening more and talking less, particularly in situations where the stakes are high and emotions are involved. So why do we find it so hard to keep quiet, especially around family? Part of it comes from the false sense of security we feel in family gatherings. We assume that because we're with people who know us, we can speak more freely. But that's where the danger lies. Family dynamics are delicate, and trust is one of the most valuable elements in maintaining those relationships. When you reveal information that should stay hidden, you undermine that trust, and in the long run, it can alienate you from the very people you care about. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor, said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." In other words, the way we think and speak shapes who we are, and if we're constantly engaging in thoughtless talk, it eventually affects our character and how others perceive us. Think about the long-term effects of being labeled as someone who can't keep family matters private. When you betray trust, especially in a family setting, people start to guard themselves around you. They share less, open up less, and in some cases they may even avoid you altogether. Over time, this creates a wall between you and your loved ones, a wall that's built with every piece of information you reveal that wasn't yours to share. Have you ever experienced this in your own life? Maybe a time when a family member shared something about you that wasn't meant for others, and it left you feeling exposed or betrayed. How did that affect your relationship with that person? Chances are it took time to rebuild the trust that was lost, if it was ever fully repaired at all. In Stoic philosophy, there's a heavy emphasis on controlling what is within our power, and one of the few things we have full control over is our speech. The Stoics understood that words, once spoken, can't be taken back, and that's why they advocated for a life of measured, thoughtful communication. If you're constantly speaking without thinking, especially in sensitive family matters, you're not just risking your own reputation, you're also risking the well-being of the entire family dynamic. As the Stoic philosopher Zeno of Citium said, "Better to trip with the feet than with the tongue." This reminds us that the consequences of careless speech can often be more harmful than physical mistakes. Now, how do we avoid becoming the family traitor? It starts with mindfulness. The next time you're in a family gathering, take a moment to pause before you speak. Ask yourself, is this information mine to share? If the answer is no, hold back. There's great wisdom in silence, especially when the alternative is saying something that could hurt someone you care about. Practice active listening. Let others speak, and focus on their words without feeling the need to constantly contribute your own. When you listen more, you not only show respect for others, but you also avoid the risk of saying something you'll later regret. Silence is often the best way to maintain peace and harmony within a family. It's also important to remember that not everything needs to be said. Sometimes people share things with you in confidence because they trust you to keep it private. Breaking that trust, even unintentionally, can cause harm that lasts much longer than the conversation itself. Think of it this way. Every time you choose to keep a family matter private, you're strengthening the bonds of trust within your family. People will respect you more, confide in you more, and see you as someone they can rely on. And that's far more valuable than the temporary satisfaction of sharing a story or making a joke at someone else's expense. Being labeled as the family traitor isn't just about making a mistake in conversation. It's about the deeper issue of trust and respect within family dynamics. The next time you're tempted to share something that was told to you in confidence, remember the power of keeping silent. Silence is a true friend who never betrays. This quote from Confucius reminds us that when we choose silence over gossip, we protect not only our relationships, but also our integrity. By embracing the Stoic philosophy of restraint in speech, you can maintain stronger, healthier connections with the people who matter most. So before you speak, think. And when in doubt, choose silence. It's often the most powerful and respectful choice you can make. 7. You stop listening. Have you ever caught yourself in the middle of a conversation so eager to get your point across that you barely notice what the other person is saying? Or worse, have you ever been so wrapped up in talking that you didn't even realize when the conversation drifted away from a meaningful exchange to a one-sided monologue? When you talk too much, one of the inevitable consequences is that you stop listening. And when you stop listening, you miss out on one of the most important aspects of communication, the opportunity to truly connect, learn, and understand. As Epictetus once said, "Nature gave us one tongue and two ears so we could hear twice as much as we speak." This simple but profound observation teaches us that listening should take priority over talking. Yet, in a world where everyone is eager to voice their opinions, many of us fall into the trap of talking too much and losing the ability to genuinely listen. Let's break this down. The more you talk, the less room there is for others to share their thoughts. Over time, this pattern of behavior not only erodes the quality of your conversations, but also damages your relationships. People begin to feel like you don't really care about their opinions, and that can lead to feelings of frustration, disconnection, and even resentment. When you dominate the conversation, you rob the other person of their chance to express themselves, and what should have been an opportunity for mutual understanding becomes a platform for your own voice. It's easy to believe that by talking more, you're contributing more to the conversation, but in reality, the opposite is true. The more you talk, the less you listen, and without listening, you miss the opportunity to grow through the perspectives of others. Think about how this plays out in modern life. Have you ever been in a meeting at work where one person dominates the conversation, leaving everyone else feeling unheard? Or in a personal setting, perhaps at a dinner with friends or family, where one individual takes control of the discussion, only talking about themselves or their views without ever pausing to consider others? What's the outcome in those situations? You'll likely notice that the listeners gradually disengage, either mentally checking out or simply nodding along to avoid confrontation. The person doing all the talking may not even realize it, but they are pushing people away by not allowing for a real dialogue to take place. As Marcus Aurelius wisely observed, it is not death that a man should fear, but he should fear never beginning to live. And in the context of communication, we could say that one of the key ways to truly live is by embracing silence, pausing to listen, and allowing others to contribute to the conversation. One of the greatest mistakes we make when we talk too much is assuming that we already know what the other person is going to say, or that what we have to say is more important. When we take this approach, we stop being curious. And when curiosity fades, so does the potential for learning and growth. The wise man speaks because he has something to say, the fool because he has to say something, said Plato. And this quote rings true in every conversation. Every time you talk, just to fill the silence, you miss an opportunity to listen and reflect. Have you ever walked away from a conversation and realized you can't remember much of what the other person said because you were too focused on your own thoughts or preparing your next argument? That's what happens when talking takes precedence over listening. It leads to a breakdown in understanding and empathy. Listening is a skill, and like any skill, it requires practice. It's not just about hearing the words the other person is saying, but about understanding their meaning, their intent, and the emotions behind them. When you truly listen, you open yourself up to new perspectives, you allow relationships to deepen, and you create a space for real connection. But when you stop listening, you signal to the other person that their thoughts don't matter. And over time, people may stop trying to talk to you altogether. In a world where connection and communication are so essential, listening is more than just a courtesy, it's a necessity. Here's a modern example that may resonate with you. Think about social media and how it has transformed the way we communicate. On platforms like Twitter, Facebook, or even in group chats, how often do we see people engaging in meaningful listening? More often than not, we see people posting opinions, responding with knee-jerk reactions, or talking past each other rather than engaging in genuine dialogue. The fast pace of online communication encourages people to talk more and listen less, which is why it's rare to find someone who truly listens and considers the viewpoints of others. This habit of talking without listening spills over into our everyday lives, making it harder for us to slow down, be present, and give others the attention they deserve. So how do we shift away from talking too much and reclaim the power of listening? Start by being aware of your habits in conversation. The next time you're speaking with someone, consciously make an effort to listen more than you talk. When the other person is speaking, focus entirely on their words without thinking about what you're going to say next. Ask questions that show you're engaged and interested in their perspective. As the Stoic philosopher Zeno of Citium said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Therefore, we should listen twice as much as we speak." This mindset can transform the way you approach every conversation, turning it into a true exchange of ideas rather than a one-sided lecture. Thank you for being part of today's video. Before we move on, I want to take a moment to express my gratitude for your support and engagement. It's truly a pleasure to have you in our community. Feel free to share your thoughts or personal experiences in the comments. If you're new here, simply comment, "I am a newbie," or if you've been with us for a while, say, "I am Stoic." Your engagement not only highlights your presence but motivates us to keep creating more meaningful content. Let's continue this journey together, shall we? 8. Envy takes over you. Envy. It's a feeling most of us don't like to admit, but it creeps up on all of us at some point. Have you ever been in a conversation where someone starts talking about their recent success, and instead of feeling happy for them, you start comparing their achievements to your own? Maybe it's a promotion they just got, or a new car, or a vacation they're planning. As they speak, you can't help but think about where you're falling short. That uncomfortable knot forms in your stomach, and before you know it, envy has taken over your thoughts. You might even find yourself saying something you regret, making a sarcastic comment or diminishing their success to make yourself feel better. This is one of the negative effects of talking too much. It can reveal your envy and insecurity. As Seneca once said, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor." When we focus too much on what others have and voice those envious thoughts, we only expose our own dissatisfaction with life. Let's break this down. When you talk too much about the achievements or fortunes of others, you give life to your own envy. Instead of celebrating someone's success, you let comparison creep in, and that can be dangerous. Envy isn't just a fleeting emotion. It can consume your thoughts, affect your mood, and impact how you interact with others. The more you focus on what others have, the less gratitude you feel for what you've achieved. And when you vocalize this envy, it shows. People can sense it when you're not truly happy for them, and over time this can strain relationships. Think about it. Would you want to be around someone who constantly makes your successes feel like burdens? When envy takes over and you speak too much about it, you risk pushing people away. In today's world, where social media makes it easy to see everyone's highlight reel, it's even harder to avoid the temptation of comparison. Scrolling through pictures of friends' vacations, career milestones, or personal accomplishments can trigger that envy more than ever before. But what happens when you let that envy spill out into conversations? You might start talking about how lucky someone is, or you downplay their efforts with phrases like, "It must be nice to have things handed to you." When you talk this way, you aren't just devaluing their success. You're revealing your own lack of self-confidence and contentment. Epictetus wisely said, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." If we're always wanting more, and constantly talking about what others have that we don't, we'll never find peace within ourselves. A great example of how envy can take over in modern life is in the workplace. Think about that colleague who just got the promotion you were hoping for. Instead of congratulating them and learning from their success, you might start making excuses. They only got it because they knew the right people, or they must have been lucky. You may even start sharing these thoughts with others, spreading negativity instead of focusing on your own growth. This doesn't just harm your relationships with your coworkers, it harms your own mindset. The more you talk about others' achievements with envy, the more you reinforce the belief that you're somehow less capable, and that leads to frustration, anger, and resentment. Over time, this can create a toxic environment, not only for those around you but for yourself. But why do we allow envy to take over in the first place? Often, it's because we tie our self-worth to external achievements, how much we make, what we own, or how others perceive us. When someone else seems to be doing better, it feels like a personal attack on our value. But what if, instead of focusing on what others have, we focused on what we can control, our own actions, our own progress? Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor, said, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." This means that by shifting our focus from envy to gratitude, we change our mindset from scarcity to abundance. And when we stop talking about what others have and start focusing on our own journey, we begin to find peace. So how do we stop envy from taking over? First, practice self-awareness. The next time you feel envy creeping in during a conversation, pause and reflect on why you're feeling that way. Ask yourself, is this envy helping me, or is it harming me? Recognizing that envy doesn't serve you is the first step toward letting it go. Then, shift your focus to gratitude. What are you thankful for in your own life? What have you achieved that makes you proud? When you concentrate on your own successes, no matter how small, you begin to build a sense of contentment that makes it easier to celebrate others without feeling diminished. Next, practice active listening. When someone shares their achievements, instead of immediately comparing it to your own life, ask them how they got there. Learn from their experience. As the Stoic philosopher Zeno of Citium said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, therefore we should listen twice as much as we speak." By listening more and talking less, you not only gain valuable insights, but also show that you're genuinely interested in their success. This builds stronger relationships based on mutual respect rather than competition. 9. You destroy relationships. Another most harmful effects of talking too much is that you can unknowingly destroy relationships. As the Stoic philosopher Epictetus said, "It is not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." In this case, it's not just what you say, but how often and carelessly you speak that can weaken or even sever the connections you have with others. When you talk too much, you leave little space for others to share their thoughts, making the interaction feel one-sided. Over time, this can create a sense of imbalance in your relationships. People start feeling like they're not being heard, and worse, they begin to pull away, seeing you as someone who talks over them rather than someone who listens. Have you ever been in a situation where you dominate the conversation, and afterward, the other person seems distant? Maybe they don't engage as much the next time you meet, or they stop sharing personal things with you altogether. This happens because excessive talking often leads to the unintentional outcome of making the other person feel undervalued. Seneca once said, "Speech is the mirror of the soul. As a man speaks, so is he." This idea teaches us that when we speak too much without considering the feelings and perspectives of others, we reveal a lack of awareness and sensitivity toward their needs. Think about your closest relationships, whether it's with a partner, a family member, or a friend. Healthy relationships are built on mutual respect, and part of that respect comes from knowing when to speak and when to listen. When you talk too much, especially in emotionally charged conversations, you run the risk of saying something hurtful or careless. Sometimes we speak without thinking, driven by our emotions or our need to be right, and in those moments, we can say things that can't be taken back. As the Stoic Emperor Marcus Aurelius wisely stated, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Applying this to conversations, it means that we must exercise control over our words because once spoken, we can't control how they will be received or the lasting impact they will have. Have you ever noticed that in arguments or heated discussions, the more you talk, the more likely you are to say something you'll regret? It's because when emotions are high, we tend to stop thinking rationally, and our words can become weapons. Instead of fostering understanding, they create conflict. And while you might feel better in the moment releasing all your thoughts and emotions, the aftermath can be devastating. The wise man speaks because he has something to say. The fool speaks because he has to say something, said Plato. This quote is a reminder that not every thought needs to be voiced, especially when the cost is the trust and goodwill of those we care about. Let's take this idea into modern life. Think of a workplace scenario where a manager talks too much and doesn't allow their team to express their ideas. The manager may not realize it, but their constant talking creates an environment where employees feel stifled and unappreciated. Eventually, team members disengage, no longer feeling motivated to contribute because they know their voices won't be heard. This dynamic can happen in personal relationships too. When one person dominates the conversation, the other eventually shuts down, feeling like their input doesn't matter. Over time, this erodes the foundation of trust and mutual respect that relationships need to thrive. Have you experienced this before? Where constant talking from one person starts to push you away. Another common issue with talking too much is the tendency to overshare. When you constantly talk, especially in moments of vulnerability, you might reveal things that are better left unsaid. Sometimes in an effort to fill the silence or to keep the conversation flowing, we say things that can cause discomfort, embarrassment, or even betrayal. As Zeno of Citium, the founder of Stoicism, once said, "Better to trip with the feet than with the tongue." This quote speaks to the idea that a misstep in speech can be far more damaging than a physical stumble. Words can bruise relationships in ways that are difficult to heal. Now, let's consider how this plays out with social media. In today's world, people are constantly sharing their thoughts, opinions, and emotions online, often without thinking about the long-term consequences. Just as in face-to-face conversations, oversharing online can hurt relationships. A careless comment, a thoughtless post, or an emotional rant can permanently damage friendships or family bonds. The impulse to speak out and be heard is strong, especially in an age where every thought can be broadcast to the world. But the truth is, sometimes saying less, or nothing at all, is far more powerful. As the philosopher Lao Tzu said, silence is a source of great strength. In our modern world, the ability to hold back, to keep certain thoughts and feelings private, shows wisdom and maturity. 10. You expose your friend's secrets. When you talk too much, one of the most damaging things you can do is reveal your friend's secrets, whether it's intentional or not. The more you speak, the greater the risk that you'll say something that wasn't yours to share. And in doing so, you risk not only betraying their trust but also irreparably damaging the relationship. As the Stoic philosopher Seneca said, "The man who speaks more than he listens will inevitably say things he will regret." When you fail to hold back in conversations, particularly when it involves personal details entrusted to you, it shows a lack of self-control and respect for the bond of trust that friendship is built on. Think about it. How many times have you been in a casual conversation with others and before you realize it, you've let slip something personal about a friend? Maybe it was a comment about a struggle they were going through, a mistake they made, or even a positive milestone they weren't ready to share with others. At the moment, it may not seem like a big deal. You might justify it as adding to the conversation or thinking, they won't mind. But after the conversation is over, the guilt may settle in. You know deep down that it wasn't your place to reveal that information, and now you've not only risked hurting your friend, but you've also shown others that you can't be trusted to keep a confidence. In modern life, this issue is even more prevalent because we communicate so easily and often. A single careless comment in a text, a post online, or even in a group chat can spread faster than we anticipate, reaching people who were never meant to hear it. And once those words are out, there's no taking them back. As Epictetus wisely noted, first learn the meaning of what you say, and then speak. This philosophy reminds us to think before we speak, to consider the weight of our words and the impact they may have. If you're not careful, talking too much can lead you down a path of exposing your friend's secrets without even realizing the harm you've caused. One reason this happens is the natural human tendency to want to connect with others. We often think that sharing personal stories or details, whether they're our own or someone else's, helps build bonds. But when those stories aren't ours to tell, we're violating the trust placed in us by the person who shared them. Have you ever had a friend confide in you about something deeply personal, only to later find out that they shared that same story with someone else? It doesn't feel good, does it? It leaves you questioning how much you can really trust that person moving forward. Now, reverse that scenario. What if you were the one who shared their secret? How does that change the dynamic between you and your friend? Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor, once said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." If our thoughts are filled with gossip or an eagerness to share information that isn't ours, it will reflect in our actions. This constant need to fill the silence with talk, to be the person who knows the inside scoop, ultimately stains our relationships. It might feel gratifying in the moment to be the one who has the news, but the long-term consequences are much more serious. When people know they can't trust you to keep their secrets, they start distancing themselves, keeping their personal lives more private from you. Over time, this leads to weakened friendships and in some cases the loss of those relationships altogether. In today's fast-paced world, where everyone is connected, it's easier than ever to share information that wasn't meant to be public. You might find yourself in a casual conversation, talking about a friend's recent challenges or successes, not realizing that your words are crossing a boundary. Even in work settings, you might reveal something about a colleague's personal life, thinking it adds to the conversation, but instead, it creates an environment of distrust. The key to preventing this is to practice restraint. As Zeno of Citium, the founder of Stoicism, wisely said, Better to trip with the feet than with the tongue. This reminds us that while physical mistakes can be corrected, the damage caused by careless words is much harder to repair. So how do you avoid falling into the trap of exposing your friend's secrets? It starts with mindfulness. Before you speak, ask yourself, is this my information to share? If the answer is no, hold back. Silence, in these moments, is far more powerful than any contribution you might make to the conversation. By keeping quiet, you show respect for the person who trusted you with their private information. You protect not only their trust but also your own integrity. Friends confide in you because they believe in your discretion. Breaking that bond for the sake of conversation shows a lack of self-discipline. As the Stoic philosopher Epictetus taught, we should not speak unless it improves upon silence. This lesson is essential in both our personal and professional lives. Another important aspect to consider is that by exposing a friend's secrets, you put them in a vulnerable position. They might not have been ready to share that part of their life with others, or they may have told you in confidence because they were seeking support, not public discussion. Think about how you would feel if someone revealed something personal about you without your permission. The feelings of betrayal, embarrassment, or frustration that follow are often hard to shake, and while you may apologize, the damage is done. Your friend now knows that you can't be trusted with their private matters. Once trust is broken, it's difficult to rebuild, and that's why it's so crucial to be mindful of what you say. In modern life, where information spreads at lightning speed, learning to control what you share is a sign of maturity and wisdom. It's not about avoiding conversations or staying silent all the time. It's about knowing when to speak and when to hold back. A closed mouth gathers no foot. The saying goes, and it speaks to the importance of discretion in maintaining strong relationships. When you choose to protect your friends' secrets, you show them that they can rely on you, not just in the good times, but when it matters most. This is the foundation of any meaningful relationship: trust, respect, and loyalty. 11. An elephant memory. Have you ever found yourself speaking so much that you can barely keep track of what you've said? You talk so freely and frequently that your words blur together, and soon enough you don't remember the promises you made or the opinions you shared. This is where the idea of having an elephant memory comes into play. When you talk too much, you create a tangled web of statements, opinions, and commitments that you can't always keep track of. As Seneca wisely said, "The more we say, the less we remember." This applies not only to the things we say, but also to the impact those words can have on others and on ourselves. When you constantly speak without thinking or pause, you lose control over the narrative of your own life. You make promises you might not be able to keep, or worse, you contradict yourself in future conversations because you can't recall exactly what you said before. Think about it. How often have you agreed to something in the heat of a discussion only to regret it later when you realized you didn't mean it, or you simply forgot? Wise men speak because they have something to say. Fools because they have to say something. Plato once said, and this quote rings true here, "When you talk excessively, you dilute the power of your words, and those around you may begin to see you as someone who can't be relied upon." In today's world, where conversations happen quickly and often, both in person and online, this problem is more prevalent than ever. You might find yourself jumping from one conversation to the next, at work, with friends, on social media, without really thinking through what you've said. Before you know it, you've committed to something that conflicts with a previous commitment, or you've shared opinions that don't align with what you said in the past. The more you talk, the more likely you are to trip over your own words. As Epictetus once said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." This quote is a powerful reminder of the importance of listening, not just to others but to ourselves, and reflecting on our words before we speak. Let's take a moment to apply this idea to modern life. Have you ever been in a situation where, after a long conversation, You can't remember what you've agreed to do? Maybe it was a casual promise to help someone out, or a comment you made that you didn't really think through. Over time, these little forgotten promises can build up, and before you know it, you've gained a reputation for being unreliable. People start to see you as someone who talks a lot but never really follows through. This can be particularly harmful in a professional setting, where your words are often tied to your credibility. If you're constantly making commitments that you can't remember or fulfill, you might find that your colleagues lose trust in you. The same is true in personal relationships. When you talk too much without being mindful of what you're saying, you can create misunderstandings and hurt feelings. Have you ever promised a friend you'd do something for them, only to forget about it because you were juggling too many conversations and commitments at once? When we speak carelessly, we often forget the weight our words carry, and the people we care about may start to feel like they don't matter as much as they should. It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor, said Seneca. And this applies not just to material wealth, but also to our desire to talk more, to be heard more. Sometimes the real richness in life comes from speaking less and listening more. Now consider how you can change this dynamic. The first step is to practice intentional speech. Before you speak, ask yourself if what you're about to say truly adds value to the conversation. Are you speaking just to fill the silence, or do your words carry meaning and purpose? By pausing and thinking before you talk, you give yourself the opportunity to speak more thoughtfully, ensuring that what you say aligns with your true beliefs and intentions. This will not only help you avoid contradictions, but also make you a more reliable and trustworthy person in the eyes of others. As Marcus Aurelius once said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." If your thoughts are scattered and impulsive, your words will reflect that, but if your thoughts are deliberate and considered, your speech will follow suit. Another important aspect to consider is memory. When you talk less, you have fewer commitments and promises to keep track of. This allows you to remember the things that truly matter, to focus on the commitments you've made, and to honor them. In contrast, when you speak too much, you spread yourself thin, and it becomes difficult to keep track of all the things you've said. This is why Zeno of Citium, the founder of Stoicism, said, "Better to trip with the feet than with the tongue." A physical stumble is often easier to recover from than a verbal one, especially when your words have consequences that can harm your reputation or your relationships. So, how can you develop this practice in your everyday life? Start by making a conscious effort to speak less and listen more. When you're in a conversation, focus on what the other person is saying, instead of thinking about what you're going to say next. This not only helps you remember the conversation better, but also shows respect for the other person's thoughts and feelings. It also gives you time to reflect on your own thoughts before responding, ensuring that your words are aligned with your intentions. Another strategy is to simplify your commitments. If you find yourself agreeing to things in the heat of a conversation, take a step back and evaluate whether you can actually follow through. It's better to make fewer promises and honor them than to make many and forget half of them. This will help you build a reputation for reliability, and people will respect you more for being someone who keeps their word. As we wrap up this video, I want to challenge you to take these Stoic principles and apply them to your daily life. The power of silence, the ability to listen more, and to speak less with intention can transform not only your relationships, but also your personal growth and happiness. Remember, it's not about withholding your voice, but about choosing when and how to use it wisely. If you've made it this far, write in the comments, "Loose lips sink ships." And let me know how you're planning to use these insights in your life. I'm excited to hear about your journey and how adopting these principles makes a difference for you. Don't forget to subscribe to Stoic in Your Life and hit the notification bell so you never miss an opportunity to learn and grow with us. Share your thoughts in the comments, and let's keep this conversation going. Thanks for your support, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.